Hello, my name is the Reverend Keith Kron. I'm the Director of the Office of Bisexual, Gay, Lesbian, and Transgender Concerns. I also coordinate the Beyond Categorical Thinking program. Your congregation is in search for a minister or possibly a director of religious education. Let me take a moment to thank you for serving on your congregation's search committee, because I know the hard work the upcoming year or years of service will involve. Few people will understand how much you do. Beyond Categorical Thinking is a program that started nearly 20 years ago. It started as a way to help congregations improve the odds that they would find the best match for their congregation in terms of their minister or now religious educator. The idea of the program was that we would hear from ministers who were persons of color, women, gay, lesbian, bisexual, ministers with disabilities, who would say, I would go and meet with the search committee and would be told, you were our second choice, or we're not ready for you now. And often a congregation would find itself in a place where it would not call the best match because of some biases that had creeped into the process as they were in the process of search. So as a result of these conversations with ministers and with congregations, we created the Beyond Categorical Thinking program, which has now been around for more than 20 years. The first year that we had the program, only 7 congregations participated. Last year, over 40 of the congregations that settled ministers participated in the process. One of the things that we have learned over this time is that this conversation is particularly useful for search committees as they go through their process. It allows them to gain not only insights into themselves, but also their congregation that they might not otherwise have experienced. We're putting this information up on YouTube because not all congregations are able to do a Beyond Categorical Thinking now, and we wanted to give congregations the option of being able to access some of the materials this way. Now, often when a congregation is searching, for example, for a minister, they have something already in mind, and often that is a preconceived image. For example, if I were to say to you, when you think of a nurse, you get a preconceived notion of what a nurse would be, or someone who is a firefighter, or a police officer, or a kindergarten teacher, or a rapper. We have these preconceived notions. That is also often true for people in our congregations. We'd like to think we are better than that, but often we still hold these biases that come in to our thinking. And that is the purpose of Beyond Categorical Thinking, to get us out of these preconceived notions and to get us looking for the best skills, the best qualities, the things that we really want in a minister, as opposed to just an image of who that person is and what that person might do. What we know about Unitarian Universalists is that our culture doesn't always live up to our values. Our stated values are that we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Yet we don't always live that. Often in our Unitarian Universalist culture, biases occur and still occur, even though we'd like to believe that we don't. Congregations that are actively working on these are in better shape than those congregations who sort of have a "we've done that and don't need to look at that again" mentality. In fact, most of our ministers are in fact interested in knowing if a congregation has done Beyond Categorical Thinking. Are they engaged in some way in doing work around anti-oppression of any kind, as a way to know that this is a congregation that is interested in learning. One of the things that I also know about Unitarian Universalists is that we're not as smart as we think we are. We like to think of ourselves as being very smart people, and we do have a fair amount of intelligence. But often, as we will see in both this video and in a couple of the other videos, things Unitarian Universalists say surprise us, and we discover that we actually, in fact, are not as smart as we think we are, that we have more biases than we think we do, and that there is still and always much more to learn. The history of Beyond Categorical Thinking started 20 years ago, as I mentioned. During that time, we have now worked with over 400 congregations in the process, and we have learned some really good things from Beyond Categorical Thinking over the last 20 years. One of the things the program did almost immediately is it helped reduce the bias that we had toward having women as ministers. For the first 5 years of the program, Beyond Categorical Thinking included women as a group of people whom we looked at. Now today it is done only by special request, and that usually only happens in large congregations with multiple ministries. That is not to say that biases still don't exist toward women, and we'll talk about some of those later, but we stopped hearing some of the same complaints from women that we heard 20 years ago. That said, we still hear complaints and problems from ministers who identify as people of color, Latino, Latina, Hispanic, bisexual, gay, lesbian, transgender, and ministers with disabilities as they go through the search process. And that's what we are here to talk about today. The program does not cover other areas which often congregations would like us to cover. It covers issues of race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, and disability, and will cover women on request, gender on request. What it doesn't cover, for example, is theology. The reason it doesn't cover theology is that is actually the work of the interim minister in working with a congregation over an entire year. It is a much bigger issue that needs to be worked on than in just one weekend and subsequent conversations. We don't work with issues of class unless there are specific reasons to do so. For the most part, while this is a good thing for talk about, Unitarian Universalists are such a basic beginning of their understandings of class and classism that it is not yet appropriate for us to be talking about this in this particular workshop. It would simply take up more time to do the basics than we actually have. What's interesting about the issue of age as a bias in the process is that we don't hear the complaints from ministers who are younger and older like we do from ministers who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, ministers of color, ministers with disabilities. What we hear in the process is that some congregations specifically are looking for a younger minister. Other congregations are looking for someone who has more experience, more life experience, and often these things balance it out. What we have seen, interestingly enough, is in our congregations, is that more and more of our longer congregations are looking for someone who is younger, someone who they can help mold to be their minister for the next 30 years. What we're looking also in any number of our congregations is for ministers who have more seasoning. This often is for mid-sized congregations, someone who will have adequate life experience. So we see a balance based on what congregation wants, and ministers who are younger often are called to larger churches or to associate positions just stalling out. Ministers who are older are often called to congregations where the congregation is looking for more experience. That's not to say that the bias doesn't exist within our congregations, it just plays out differently. What we have learned over the last 20 years is fascinating. What we have learned in particular around congregations that have done beyond categorical thinking and those that have not is that congregations that have chosen to do the beyond categorical thinking program in some way are nearly twice as likely to call a minister who identifies as a person of color, as Latino, Latina, Hispanic, as a minister who is gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, as a minister with a disability, as those congregations that have not done the beyond categorical thinking. What we think the success of the program is, as a result, is not that the program immediately has some sort of magic wand over the congregation and makes them change. We just think it opens up the conversation in a congregation and allows the congregation to look at its biases more and be more open to a minister who might in fact be the best match for them. That is, after all, the goal of this particular program, for you to find the best match. One of the other things that has been said to you, and I will say to you again, is that it may be your job as a search committee to find no one. You may have a particular candidate in mind, but that person may decide to go somewhere else, and your second, third, or fourth choice may not be the best match for you. Your best interest might be served by not calling someone this particular year and waiting another year. I have seen more damage done in congregations with congregations who settled for a second or a third choice who wasn't a good match for them than in congregations that have waited a year and done another year of interim minister. So a sign of success for you may be saying, you know, we just didn't find someone this year. We will look again next year. And I hope the congregation will affirm you in that. I wish you the best of success in your search for a minister. The other two videos that are also available here, one will talk about the biases we do see within congregations that still exist, and the third will talk about biases that happen within the search committee. Again, best of luck in your search. May you in fact find the best match for your congregation. Thank you for all your work.